dive in. We've talked enough about the BS that goes into it. Let's talk positive Gamecock baseball.
Oh yeah, a lot of positive this weekend, Collyn.
South Carolina. Allow me to put it in perspective, and then we'll dive into the minutia of it.
Yeah,
South Carolina is coming off its first sweep of Georgia since 2013. We talk about how old I am. That was my senior year of high school. Was South Carolina's last sweep at Georgia, or sweep of Georgia, period. The last sweep of Georgia in Athens was in 2010, the same year South Carolina. We all know how that season ended. The last time they won back-to-back series wins at Georgia. So they won the series at Georgia in 21. And then obviously won this year. The last time they won consecutive road series at Georgia, 2000 and 2002 were the last times that happened. And I believe in 2002, they did it at the end of the year to clinch the SEC regular season title. There's a great story that I wrote for Gamecock Central about that 2000 team. I encourage y'all to read it. But South Carolina now 20-1. Its best start, pretty okay. Its best start since that 2000 year, where they started the year, I believe, 21-0. Which you can argue that 2000 team, that was the best regular season in program history. Obviously ended with the Game 3 loss in the College World Series, or not the College World Series, the Super Regional to ULL. But you're talking about a team right now that's on just one hell of a heater. Everything, we talked even before the season, this is one of those things where if everything hits right, if everything goes the way you expect it to go, this is a top 10 team.
Oh, yeah.
This is a team that can contend for a top 16 seed, a top 8 seed. And so far, through the first 5 weeks of the year, now granted, there's 9 more weeks to go, everything's hitting, and you're seeing that. South Carolina ranked in 11th by D1 Baseball, 14th by Baseball America. They're up 5 spots in both. They're number 2 in the RPI, and I'll caution against paying attention too heavily to the RPI right now. You're still a couple weeks away from that really, really mattering, but you're number 2 in that right now. 8-1 in the first 2 quadrants, and you're playing, I would argue that top to bottom, pitching to defense to hitting, this was literally the best weekend of your season so far, top to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a way to open up SEC play as I, ran downstairs and grabbed the broom because I forgot to grab my prop before the show started. But, I mean, yeah, no better way to start off SEC play. Again, we talked about it last week, Collyn, that this team, one of the biggest concerns going into this year was, are they going to be able to battle back in games where they're behind? And I mean, we saw that. And I think, especially in game 1, to be able to do that in the 9th inning, shout out to Michael Braswell, the man, the myth, the legend. I mean, I think, all props to him to be able to come off the bench like that. Cold hasn't seen, the field really, I don't know if at all, or a little bit, in the non-conference, be able to come off like that in such a big spot and do what he did, the 2-run double, to take the game. I think, that answers all the questions, about the offense, coming from behind. I think, this offense is really, 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 really good, and you can't really understate that. And I think as a whole, we saw the bullpen step up where Will Sanders, wasn't necessarily bringing his best stuff, and we'll get into that, I know. But I was really impressed. And the first game more in particular than anything, just because it was a tighter game, they did battle back. Personally, Collyn, I remember texting you that, they kind of choked it away a little bit. And was I horrendously wrong. They were able to battle back. And now I'm not afraid to count this team out of any game. Like I refuse to count this team out of any game unless they're getting 10-run ruled by somebody, which I, sure as hell don't foresee anytime soon. But I mean, I was really impressed with how, well they did situationally. They did well. They weren't always swinging for the fences in the first game, and let alone even the second game and third. They just, they were able to situationally hit, and that was one of the bigger concerns we had going into this SEC schedule. And something we talked about last week was, with all the home runs, are they doing well enough situationally? And I think this weekend was a perfect sign of both. I think you got the best of both worlds, and, hashtag Gamecock home run tracker. The Gamecocks are leading the country with 56 home runs. They're 5 up on Florida, and also a game up on Florida as well. And then they're 10 up on Old Dominion. Shout out Michael Sauls, who is covering them. Salsy, yeah, our guy. But yeah, I mean, the hitting just doesn't stop. And we talked in length about it last week on where it's coming from. It's coming from Monty. It's coming from the hitting coach. Like it's coming from everywhere. And there's so many more bats in this lineup. It's ridiculous, Collyn. Like, this lineup is loaded with talent. And I mean, I really can't find any complaints from the weekend. I mean, obviously, going into the late innings on the first game on Saturday, I was going to say, you could complain about the situational hitting, but then Michael Braswell comes up in the clutches of spots and does what he does. And, I think it was something I was worried about was the clutch factor in the hitting when there are guys on base, runners on base. And I think this weekend kind of squashed that. And not all of their runs in the next 2 games came by home run either. Although they still got their fair share, not everything came from home runs. So I think that was a big thing, and a big building point too, is like, they can spray it wherever they want, when they want to. And those big numbers prove that. I think if you're this offense, you want to just keep using this momentum. You got a tough test in Missouri, which we'll get to later. But I mean, you got to keep using the momentum. Your bats are arguably the hottest bats in the country right now, let alone the SEC. So you got to ride the momentum.
Yeah, and it's not fair to expect. I mean, I think in game 2 of the series, like, all 9 dudes had hits. I think in game 3, 8 of the 9 drove in at least 1 run. Do I think that's sustainable over the rest of these 27 games? Probably not. But what you're impressed with is the quality of at bat.
Yeah,
you're impressed with the ability to work pitches. I mean, hell, you got Liam Sullivan out in 3 1/3. You're talking about a dude that's came into this giving up 1 earned run in 4 starts and had a ton of strikeouts and didn't walk a ton of people. And for you to work the count and for you to get him out and tag him for, I think it was 5 earned runs, 6 earned runs. I don't have the box score right in front of me, but that's what you want. In South Carolina, the bugaboo early was, and even Monty Lee said it, like, we need to be better situationally. We need to be better with runners on. We need to be better with runners in scoring position. And it's 1 series. It's 3 games. It's not a complete sample size. And you still have LSU on the schedule. You got a Missouri team that's playing pretty well right now. You got Florida, you got Vanderbilt, you got a ton in Arkansas late. You have a ton of really good games, but you passed the first test. South Carolina hits 16 of 49, almost 327 with runners on base. You go, I guess, 14 of 37 in your final 2 games. You go 11 of 36, which is 306. With runners in scoring position. And you go 9 of 26 over the final 2 games. So this is an offense right now that's situationally hitting pretty well. And like, that's what you want. You're taking really good at bats. And, that Saturday game, the 12-2 game, it's, you got so much production from the bottom of your lineup, which you just didn't get last year. If you're South Carolina, last year it was Brant Belk in the leadoff spot, Braylon Wimmer, Andrew Weister, and then Josiah Seitler. And then after that, it was like, oh, well, if we get something from the bottom of like the final 5 hitters, whatever. You're talking about the bottom of that lineup giving you quality at bat after quality at bat. And, McGillis and Wimmer had 5 RBI. Petrie had 5 RBI himself, and we'll get to Ethan Petrie. But the bottom of that order, for the top of the order to have those RBI opportunities, the bottom of the order has to get on base. And you're talking about your 6, 7, 8 hitters going 3, 4, 8 with 4 runs scored, 2 walks, and 3 Ks, and 2 sacrifice bunts. Like, that's really good. And then you pair that with the top of the order on Sunday going, I think, 5 for 9, scoring, I think, 8 runs or something crazy, driving in 5 on their own. So it's an offense right now where I don't know if you can expect every single guy to hit at the same time, but it's an offense right now that's really tough to pitch to. And guys are going to grind out at bats, and you're seeing that. I mean, the strikeout numbers were a little high, but you walked, I can't tell you how many times. And in reality, with this pitching staff and what you're working with on the mound, you just need a middle-of-the-road offense. And right now, they're not a middle-of-the-road offense. And that spells good things for South Carolina. South Carolina, if it plays like that for 30 games, is going to be really good. And that was an Omaha caliber style of play. I'm not saying that's an Omaha caliber team right now, but because they still have a ton to figure out. But the way they pitched and the way they hit and they played solid enough defense, that's a team that can beat anybody on a given day. And there's tougher opponents still left to come. I'm not saying that Georgia's the be-all, end-all, but I was really, really impressed with what I saw from South Carolina.
Yeah, likewise, Collyn. Likewise. So we kind of got through our signs of concern here. You want to go to the awards?
We still need a leadoff hitter. That's one thing that I'll say.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Will McGillis did really well for you in that role he was 1 for 5 on Saturday in that game too with the double and 2 RBI, which was good. Had those 2 leadoff home runs, one of which was wind aided. That leadoff home run got up in a jet stream and got gone, but he gives you a quality at bat. He's an older dude that gives you a quality at bat. And do I know if he's going to be there the entire season? I don't know. He seems he's been a career bottom of the order hitter more during his career at Southern Miss. So I don't know if he's staying in that leadoff spot, but he gives you 2 home runs. He gives you 2 RBI from the leadoff spot, and we'll see how that goes. But cut down on the strikeouts. Now you were facing, most of those came from Jaden Wood, or I think Jaden Woods was his name. But most of it came from him. 11 of those strikeouts were Jaden Woods strikeouts, and you'd like to not strike out looking as much as they did at times. But what I will say is Monty even said it, teams that walk a lot and see a ton of pitches sometimes strike out a lot. So it's something to monitor moving forward. And I think we'll see over the course of the next few weeks if that's a problem that needs correcting as you get into the true thick of SEC play and that what is an absolute gauntlet of a gauntlet in April for South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree. I love the point about the leadoff hitter. It's fluctuated. I think it will continue to fluctuate. It's kind of like the closer, but obviously the closer, we have a question about that. We'll get to that in our Q&A section. But the closer, they kind of found an answer pretty early. They're still rotating one. It's down to 1 or 2 guys between Jers and Veach. But, I think the leadoff hitter it's going to take some time just to kind of hammer it out. And I think there are 2 guys that are really comfortable there, that being, Petrie and obviously McGillis, the 2 guys. But I don't know. I think, minus the leadoff hitter, the strikeouts, obviously it's something you got to watch. But when you're putting up 12, some odd runs a game, can't really complain about it too much. Obviously, it's something to watch. But if you're putting up runs, it kind of, winning heals all.
Yeah.
God. So
it's easier to fix and it's easier to take
Exactly.
If you're South Carolina, you stick to your approach. And if you strike out, that's what Monty's talked about, Monty Lee, and he's like, you see those really good walk teams, and sometimes they do strike out a lot. And South Carolina walked 18 times over 23 innings this weekend. So one of those where, like, yes, you're going to strike out, but you're also walking at a good clip too. South Carolina got on base in 44.7% of their plate appearances this weekend. So you take that, but you'd like to see those strikeout numbers decrease a little bit as you get into the throes of SEC play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we move forward, because we'll talk about pitching next, but before we leave, hitter of the series, Intern Joe, what do you got?
Yeah, so my hitter of the series, my main hitter of the series is Gamecocks. He had pretty big numbers on Sunday, and then also definitely did his part in the doubleheader on Saturday. I think going into Saturday they knew he was a bigger bat in the lineup, and you saw better pitching, but it just took Gavin a little bit to warm up. Is my thing, and he did pretty well situationally. He finished the weekend with 3 hits, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. 4 walks and 3 strikeouts. I think the 4 walks is something to look at too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about Gavin.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing for me, just because it shows you, even though he's striking out 3 times, he's also getting on base. And when teams are going to try to pitch around him, Gavin knows where his strike zone is. Gavin knows when to take a pitch, and I think that's something he's really improved on as the year's gone on. It's something we've seen, and he kind of struggled with strikeouts early. He was either striking out or hitting, but he's done a lot better job of walking. And then I guess my secondary MVP, it's short. We talked about him earlier, is Michael Braswell. Again, I wanted to give him his flowers once again because it's he's a guy that not a lot of people were talking about last season. The freshman coming in, starting at shortstop and all that, and then coming into this year, it's where's Braz? What's he doing? Why is he on the bench? And it is because this team is so loaded. But I mean, Braswell, he got into that situation on Saturday, down by 2 or down by 1 run with 2 guys on and doubled down the line. I think it was clutch. And he definitely proved his worth and showed everyone that he's still here. It's not like he's fading off into the sunset and possibly transferring at the end of the year or anything like that. He answered all the doubters, and again, I wanted to give him his flowers again because it was really, 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 really clutch hitting from Braz. And I mean, he was again the main reason why they were able to complete the sweep and save that first game.
Yeah, and what I'll say about Gavin Casas is when you have those left-handed power hitters, it's so easy for them to fall in the trap of, I got to hit everything. I got to swing at everything. And you see a lot of those lefties strike out a ton. You see them with holes in their swings and struggling to understand the strike zone. And with Gavin, 4 walks to 3 strikeouts this weekend, he got on base at a 643 clip. That's what you want. He's going to hit home runs, but when he's not hitting home runs, can he walk? Can he get on base and set the table for Cole Messina, for Talmadge LeCroy, for Ethan Petrie, who is my hitter, my offensive player of the week. Petrie slashed 500, 500, and 1250 with 3 of his 6 hits being home runs and driving in 7 RBI. And he struck out twice, which obviously you like to see decrease because you don't like strikeouts in general. But the question always becomes, if you're a freshman and you've gotten off to this great start and all this, do you is it just a byproduct of you being really good, or is it facing low level pitching? And while Ethan Petrie still has the LSUs, the Floridas, the et ceteras to face, he passed the first test. And I thought he looked really good for more of it than not. Couple 2-strike hits, which was impressive. And I think if you're Ethan Petrie, you have to feel really good about who you are and what you are at the plate right now. Still needs to get better defensively. He's working on becoming a right fielder, which he didn't play a ton of in high school or travel ball. Was played shortstop for his high school team. Was primarily a third baseman. So he's still getting used to playing right field at the collegiate level, but his bat has been the biggest surprise through the first 5 weeks of the season, and got to give the guys due. And my honorable mention, Will McGillis, a dude that hit 500, got on base at a 643 clip, had 2 bombs, 4 walks to no strikeouts. A guy that just gives you more often than not a good at bat. He might not hit for a super high average, but you're going to get quality from him, and walked 4 times, which is what you want, and gave you 2 leadoff bombs at the leadoff spot. So good for him, and that's what you need if you're South Carolina. You brought him in to be a veteran bat, and he's been that through the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we saw what Petrie did, freshman of the week. And Will McGillis, too, another guy. Willis, it's finally catching on Twitter, that nickname that I bestowed onto him. I think it's because, what you're talking about, Willis, obviously everyone knows the line from the show and whatever, and the fact that his last name is McGillis, it's got the I, you guys can put it together.
South Carolina athletics intern, Will McGillis.
Yeah, absolutely. Like he's a dog.
Yes.
And so I love, your 2 MVPs, Collyn. I couldn't have said it better than myself.